She was already seated when they came for her. The jet bridge door slammed open. 3 airport security officers in black uniforms stormed into first class. Everyone turned. Heads craned. A baby started crying somewhere in the back. The plane hadn't even finished boarding. The lead officer, a square-jawed man with mirrored sunglasses still on indoors, marched down the aisle, stopping in front of her seat. "We need you to step off the aircraft." A few passengers nearby shifted uncomfortably. The woman in 1A looked up from her tablet, blinked, and said calmly, "Why?" "We were asked to remove you," the officer said. "Now, please." Her voice didn't rise. "By whom?" He didn't answer. Another officer reached past him and tapped her shoulder. That's when she stood up. She didn't raise her voice, didn't resist. She stood the way a person stands when they know the weight of $1 billion behind them. The kind of poise that doesn't flinch under pressure, but absorbs it and stores it like fuel. Except this time, it cracked, just a little. Not because she was afraid, but because she saw what was really happening. She saw the eyes on her. She saw the flight attendant backing away without a word. She saw the quiet smirks in coach, the hushed whispers. And she knew, as she stepped into the aisle, one of the officers placed a hand on her arm. She froze. "Don't touch me," she said. A man behind her pulled out his phone, started recording. The officer let go. She walked off the plane. Not a single member of the flight crew spoke up. Not one. 20 minutes later, her assistant was on a video call, face pale, voice shaking. "Natalie, I just heard. Are you okay?" Natalie Webb nodded once. "I'm fine." "What the hell happened?" She was silent. Then she looked out at the tarmac, where the airline's logo gleamed red and white on the tail of the plane, now taxiing away without her. "Pull everything," she said. Her assistant blinked. All of it." "Every dime," she said. "We're done." The screen froze for a second. "You mean, Natalie, 4 billion? You're serious?" She nodded again, slower this time. "Call legal. Start the paperwork." Silence stretched. Her assistant didn't argue. Didn't ask why. Because they both already knew. The camera flickered off. Natalie exhaled. And then her phone buzzed. A different alert. From an unknown number. "We know what you're doing." She stayed at the screen. The words didn't make sense. Not yet. But they would. And they would ruin everything. Unless she moved fast. 9 months earlier, Natalie Webb stood at the edge of a mother's hospital bed in Atlanta, gripping the rail as if it could anchor her through the storm she'd been wading through all year. Her mother stirred. Oxygen hissed through the tube beneath her nose. "You working again?" she asked, voice rough. Natalie managed a dry laugh. "When am I not?" "You need to sleep. You look like a ghost." She didn't answer that. Her mother didn't know about the calls from Tokyo that came in at 3 a.m., or the last-minute trip to Zurich to salvage the merger, or the board fight in LA where she nearly lost control of her own company. She also didn't know that Natalie hadn't cried since her father died. It had been 18 years. That night, Natalie walked out into the hospital parking lot with a half-empty coffee, sat in her car, and watched as the rain started falling again. It hadn't let up in days. She closed her eyes and let the quiet press in. Then her phone lit up. A message from Call, her CFO. Simple. Clean. We're greenlit. All $4 billion. Deal closes Q1. She let the silence hang for a beat. Then she smiled. That deal, the one she'd chased for 2 years, built from the ground up, raised from seed to skyscraper. That deal was going to cement everything. Her legacy. Her mother's future. The scholarships. The fund for underrepresented founders. Her entire vision for what power could look like when it belonged to the people who had never been allowed to touch it. She whispered, "Let's fly." 2 weeks later, Natalie stepped onto the stage at the Black Founders Summit in New York, wearing a dark plum suit and heels that clicked with purpose. The crowd roared. She didn't flinch. She never did. Success, she told the crowd, isn't about proving anyone wrong. It's about proving that we belong at the table without permission. The applause thundered. Later that night, over drinks with her childhood friend Erica, a journalist now with the Washington Times, Natalie finally said it out loud. "I'm going to change everything." Erica leaned back, eyebrow raised. "You already have." "No, Not yet. But this next move, the deal with Argo Airlines, it's going to shake the whole damn tree. Erica frowned. Why them? Their track record on equity's garbage. Exactly, Natalie said. That's what makes it work. You don't wait for the system to fix itself. You invest in it, and you rewrite the rules. Erica didn't look convinced, but she didn't argue. Natalie was too far in to back out. In the months that followed, the deal moved fast. Natalie met with Argo's XX, pitched them on a partnership that would double their market share and revolutionize accessibility. She promised them clean fuel tech, a global expansion strategy, and a customer base they couldn't reach on their own. They wanted in. She negotiated every clause, made sure her team had leverage, put diversity targets in writing, secured funding for apprenticeships, supplier contracts, community investments. She planned to make Argo the first major airline not just to pay lip service to equity, but to be forced to live it. But behind the scenes, not everyone was on board. It started with little things. A director who suddenly went dark. A delay on signatures with no explanation. A boardroom conversation where someone asked her if she really had the capacity to lead both the fund and the airline deal at once. Then there was the private dinner with one of Argo's VPs, an older man, polished, polite, who told her she was inspiring before suggesting she slow down a bit. Maybe focus on your core business. Let us handle the aviation side. Natalie smiled and told him she'd already hired 6 aerospace engineers from MIT. But it stayed with her. The soft resistance. The undercurrent of something else. The emails started coming late. The tone shifted. One exec suggested a friendly audit of her team's structure. Then someone leaked a confidential pitch deck to a competitor. When she confronted the Argo rep, he denied everything. Smiled. Tension kept climbing. But Natalie had been underestimated before. She wasn't new to this. She doubled down, held the line, locked in her investors, kept the press talking. Until the morning she flew out to finalize the deal. A red-eye to Dallas. She boarded the plane just after midnight. Quiet, calm, focused. Then the door slammed, and the officers came in, and everything broke. Now, standing in the terminal after being pulled from the flight, Natalie stared down at the message on her phone. We know what you're doing. Her pulse skipped. She looked around. No one nearby seemed out of place. Business travelers on laptops. A janitor emptying trash. A gate agent calling for last-minute boarders. But someone was watching. Someone knew something they weren't supposed to. She tapped her screen and forwarded the message to her head of security. Then she grabbed her suitcase, lifted her chin, and walked. And as she stepped into the night air, her phone buzzed again. A photo this time. A still frame. From inside her company. From inside her office. Of her, sitting at her desk. And a single line beneath it. You were never supposed to win. Natalie froze. Something far bigger than a racist incident was unraveling. And she wasn't about to let it take her down. Not without a fight. The air outside the airport was cold enough to bite. But Natalie barely noticed. She was staring at the photo on her phone, her reflection staring back from the glass. It was a surveillance shot, high quality, timestamp from 3 days ago. She wore the same navy blazer she tossed over the back of her chair that evening, the same curls pinned up as she had for the video pitch with the EU investors. The photo was from inside Web Capital, not a window shot, not a paparazzi grab. It had been taken by someone with clearance. Natalie stood motionless near the curb while car horns barked and Lyft drivers jockeyed for space. Her heart was steady, but her breathing felt shallow. She'd had her share of opposition, subtle digs, and power plays, especially from men in shiny suits who hated that she'd walked through doors they'd assumed were locked. But this was different. This was someone saying, "We see you. We know where you sit. We can get close." The last time she'd felt this exposed was when her father died, and the world moved on like it hadn't happened. She pulled herself back to the moment. Focus. She texted only 3 people: Monica, her chief of staff, Harvey, head of cybersecurity, and Carl, her CFO. Just one sentence. Meet me at the Atlanta office. Emergency protocol. No questions. 90 minutes. Then she slid into the back seat of a waiting black SUV, gave the driver a quiet nod. and shut the door behind her. The moment the car pulled away, she opened her laptop. There were already news alerts popping up. Black CEO forcibly removed from plane by security. Viral video. Was Natalie Webb racially profiled? Argo Airlines issues statement. We are investigating the incident. She clicked the Argo statement. It was short. We take all matters of customer service seriously. We are aware of an incident involving a passenger removed from Flight 2286 to Dallas. At this time, we are gathering all facts. We apologize for any inconvenience caused. Inconvenience, she whispered. They were already trying to bury it, trying to make it sound routine, like it wasn't a declaration of war. She dug through her email and found the flight itinerary. Rechecked the seat assignment. First class, confirmed. No flagged issues. She wasn't late, wasn't aggressive, hadn't even spoken to anyone except the flight attendant who took her coat. Her team had paid for the seat through the Argo Corporate Gold portal, one of the perks they had offered her. The deal wasn't just business. It was supposed to be a statement. A turning point. Now it was ash. By the time the SUV turned off I-85 and pulled up to the gates of Webb Capital's Atlanta headquarters, Natalie had already reviewed surveillance coverage from their internal servers and was halfway through an encrypted chat with Harvey. He'd replied in under a minute. That photo was pulled from our private server. Layer 4 access. Only 6 people have it, including me and you. She stayed at the screen. Then we've got a mole. His next reply came a moment later. Or worse, someone's been inside the building. Monica was already waiting in the lobby when Natalie stepped out of the elevator. She looked pale and tense, her phone clutched tight in one hand, a clipboard in the other. Security just swept the server room. No breach indicators yet, she said. But the backup log shows someone pulled internal footage at 2:07 a.m. 2 nights ago. Who was in the building? Monica glanced at the clipboard. 3 overnight custodial staff, 2 from the building vendor, and Carl, logged in remotely about 15 minutes before the pull. Natalie's eyes narrowed. Carl doesn't have level 4. Not unless. I know, Monica said. I checked. He shouldn't. Natalie took the clipboard, scanned the access logs. The entry was clean, almost too clean. Then Carl walked in. He looked calm, as always. Dark suit, slightly crooked tie, eyes sharp. Natalie, I came as soon as I saw your message. She held up the clipboard. You logged in 3 nights ago. He nodded slowly. Yes, I was reviewing our capital reserve numbers. Nothing unusual. Then why does your login timestamp match the one used to pull security footage from my office? His expression didn't shift, but something behind his eyes flickered. I didn't pull footage, he said. I wouldn't need to. She studied him for a long beat. You're saying someone used your credentials. I'm saying someone's playing with our system, Carl said. And if they can mimic me, then we have a bigger problem than a photo. Monica crossed her arms. You think it's Argo? Carl hesitated. If they wanted leverage. Maybe, but this feels personal. Natalie agreed, but she didn't say it out loud. Instead, she turned to Harvey, who had just arrived, laptop in hand. He was already typing. I need a trace on that footage. Any IP flag, metadata, anomalies. I don't care how long it takes. On it, he said. Natalie stepped into her office and shut the door behind her. She finally let herself sit. For a moment, she thought about her mother, still recovering, still telling her to slow down. She thought about her father, who once told her, when she was just 15 and furious about a failed science fair project, they'll come for you harder than anyone else. So you better know who you are before they get the chance to tell you. She'd never forgotten that. And now, someone was trying to tell a story about her that she hadn't written. But they were going to regret it. She pulled up the list of institutional partners linked to the Argo deal. The pension funds, the private equity backers, the family offices, the ones who had all bet on her vision. She drafted a single message and sent it to every one of them. Webb Capital is suspending the Argo partnership pending further internal review. We will be in touch within 72 hours. Thank you for your discretion. Then she picked up the phone and dialed a direct line. Put me through to the chairman of the Argo board, she said. Right now. The assistant stuttered, but complied. After a few minutes of hold music and a barely veiled attempt to dodge the call, the chairman came on. "Natalie," he said, "syrup slick. I was going to call you this morning. Unfortunate situation. We're looking into it." "No," she said. "You're not." A pause. "I'm sorry. You're not looking into anything. You're covering your ass. That flight crew? They didn't make a mistake. They followed a plan. Someone gave an order. And if you think I won't burn your company to the ground over it, you don't know me." Another pause. "Natalie, let's not. I've already begun pulling our capital," she said. "We'll see how your stock does tomorrow." She hung up before he could respond. The silence afterward was heavy. Then, the door burst open. Harvey. His face was tight. "I found the trace," he said. Natalie stood. "Talk." The photo. It was routed through an off-site relay. But the original request came from inside Argo's internal servers. Natalie's stomach twisted. "You're sure?" He nodded. "And there's more," he said. "You're not the only one they were watching. They've pulled video on Monica, Carl, me, even Erica from the Times. Someone's building a dossier." Before she could respond, her phone buzzed again. A text. No name. Just a video. She tapped play. It was a clip of her mother, being wheeled into a hospital room. A doctor at her side. The camera angle, high, discreet, had been taken from inside the hospital security feed. Natalie's hand went cold. Then the caption below the video appeared. "You don't get to decide who walks away from this." She looked up at Harvey, her voice low and controlled. "Lock everything down. No calls. No files. Not until I say." He didn't ask why. Because now it wasn't just about business. It was war, and someone had just made it personal. The video wouldn't stop playing in her head, even after she closed the message. Even after Harvey encrypted her phone and Monica disabled inbound traffic to the company's internal cloud, Natalie still saw the same image on a loop. Her mother, thin, drowsy, vulnerable, being pushed down a hospital corridor by a nurse. A moment no one was supposed to see. A moment stolen. Whoever had sent it knew exactly what they were doing. Natalie hadn't been afraid when she got dragged off a plane. Not really. Humiliated. Yes. Angry. Absolutely. But this was something else. It wasn't public. It wasn't performative. This wasn't about embarrassing her. It was about breaking her. She stood in her office, arms crossed tight, watching Harvey type like a man possessed. Carl paced behind her, muttering under his breath. Monica sat silently in the corner, eyes scanning emails, one leg shaking in slow, controlled beats. Then Monica's screen lit up. She leaned forward, squinted, and frowned. "Okay, this is weird." Natalie turned. "What?" "A story just dropped on an alt investor blog. It's getting shares. Fast." She pulled the article onto the main screen. The headline hit like a slap. Whistleblower. Natalie Webb fund misuse capital in failed real estate deal. Natalie moved closer. Under the headline was a grainy, zoomed-in photo of her walking out of a restaurant in L.A. 6 months ago. The article accused her of funneling Webb capital funds into a shell company that defaulted on a real estate redevelopment in Miami, one she'd never even heard of. No source listed, Monica muttered, scrolling. No documentation. Just screenshots and rumors. But it's getting traction. "Planted," Carl said, stopping behind her. "Guaranteed. They're trying to manufacture doubt," Harvey added. "If they can flood the zone with noise, the truth doesn't matter." Natalie said nothing. She leaned on the edge of a desk and stared at the screen. Something about the article made her gut twist. It was specific, too specific for someone who didn't have internal details. "You think this ties into the Argo deal?" Carl asked. "I think this is the Argo deal," she said. "Or someone who wants it to fail." She turned to Harvey. "Can we trace who pushed the story first?" He was already pulling up data. "The site's registered through a chain of proxies, but I'm working on it. The first share came from a Twitter account tagged to an influencer out of Texas. I'll dig." Carl looked uneasy. "We're one step away from a reputational collapse. I mean, if this hits institutional press." "It won't," Natalie said, flat. "Not yet." But she knew the game. False allegations. Public distraction. All the right pressure points to get her to drop the deal, step down from leadership, and walk away quietly. Not a chance in hell. She turned to Monica. Get me a burner phone. And set up a private meet with Erica. The journalist. She's the only one I trust with this. But it has to be off record. And it has to be face-to-face. Monica nodded and left the room. Carl hesitated, then said, I want to believe we can win this. But if the photo came from inside, and that video of your mom too. They're already inside, Natalie said. And they think I'll blink first. She stood, grabbed her coat. I want them to think that. Carl stared at her. Where are you going? To make sure they keep underestimating me. 2 hours later, she was in the back of a nondescript sedan outside a quiet diner on the edge of Decatur, wearing a gray hoodie pulled low and oversized sunglasses she hadn't touched in years. Erica slid into the passenger seat without a word. She didn't even greet her, just opened a folder and handed Natalie 3 printed photos. All were stills. All were from the airport. You got these? Natalie asked quietly. I have friends who owe me favors, Erica said. 2 different security angles. One shows the officers waiting on the jet bridge. They weren't called last minute. They were staged. Natalie's stomach knotted. And the crew? No record of a customer complaint. I checked. Erica turned to face her. This wasn't a mistake. National someone wanted it to happen exactly the way it did. And they wanted it to go viral. Natalie set the photos down. And now they are leaking fake scandals. Erica's eyes narrowed. You mean the article? Yeah. Already flagged the screenshots as doctored. They pulled part of an old SEC filing and layered in fake numbers. Who benefits if I back out of Argo? Natalie asked. Erica didn't answer right away. She reached into her bag and pulled out another sheet of paper. Names. A flowchart. At the center was the name of a man Natalie hadn't seen in 5 years. Jeffrey Lang. Lang? She whispered. He's still active. Erica nodded. He never really left. Just moved deeper. He's working through a new holding company now, Ridgegate Capital. They've been trying to force a buy-in with Argo for months. You got there first. They were pissed. Natalie stayed at the chart. Lines connected Ridgegate to shell groups, dummy media firms, even a lobbying group in D.C. They are building a pipeline, Erica said. Military logistics, air routes, private security, all under the Argo umbrella. And they don't want a black woman with a conscience sitting at the table. Natalie let that settle in. The picture was forming, clearer now. This wasn't just sabotage. It was extraction. They wanted Argo stripped down and sold off, and she was in the way. I have to go public, she said. Erica looked alarmed. Not yet. You'll get buried. If I don't, they control the story. Erica shook her head. You need proof. Something solid. Something even they can't spin. Natalie sat back. Thought. Let the silence breathe. I think I know where it is, she said. Where? They're in tonal pitch deck. I saw a glimpse of it at that dinner in D.C. One of Lang's guys let it slip. They've been prepping a shadow acquisition plan, parallel to the one I built. Erica leaned forward. If we get that, it's over. Natalie nodded. But it's locked. Their network's walled off. Erica grinned. Not if we know the right elevator to ride. The next night, Natalie was in Washington, D.C., under an alias, in a quiet hotel just blocks from Ridgegate Capital's headquarters. Harvey was already on the ground with a contact from a rival firm who'd been burned by Ridgegate years earlier, and who now wanted payback. The plan wasn't perfect. It wasn't even safe. But it was the only way. They would sneak Natalie into the Ridgegate building under vendor pass. She'd plant a scanner. Harvey would access the internal server through a known leak in the data center's maintenance logs. If all went well, they'd have the documents within 24 hours. If it went wrong, she could be arrested. Or worse. But she didn't flinch. Because now, it wasn't just about funding. Or optics. Or even Argo. It was about survival. Truth. And showing every girl who looked like her that power didn't mean staying quiet. She pulled the burner phone from her bag and texted one line to Harvey. Go time. 5 minutes later, she slipped into a black maintenance coat, badge clipped to the collar, and stepped into the elevator of Ridgegate Capital under a false name. The door slid shut. and as it began to rise, her phone buzzed again. A new message. From an anonymous number. We warned you once. Last chance. Turn back. She stayed at it, then deleted it. The elevator dinged. The door opened, and Natalie Webb stepped into the lion's den. The Ridgegate Capitol building was cold and sterile, all polished glass and brushed steel, designed to intimidate. The kind of place where everything looked expensive, but no one actually felt welcome. Natalie stepped off the elevator onto the 42nd floor, head down, a slim laptop tucked under one arm. Her badge, borrowed from a complicit IT vendor who hated Ridgegate more than he liked rules, flashed a green light as she passed the checkpoint. Late shift? Asked a security guard, glancing up from his desk. She nodded, didn't speak. He didn't press. This part of the plan had to go perfectly. If she got stopped, if her ID got flagged or her face caught the wrong camera, it was over. Not just for the operation, but for everything. She wasn't just risking her own future anymore. She was risking the protection of every employee, every founder, every partner who had trusted her. She followed the layout Harvey had sent earlier, a detailed floor plan annotated with red dots and arrows, down to the guard rotations. She had 14 minutes before the next sweep. Just enough time to plant the scanner in the server closet and ghost out. It was strangely quiet. Too quiet for a floor that, by Ridgegate's own promotional videos, was a hive of innovation and strategy. No hive hay, just silence and the soft hum of fluorescent lights. She found the door. It looked like every other in the hallway, plain except for a small panel that blinked red. The badge buzzed. The light turned green. She slipped inside. The room was narrow and windowless, a thrum of server towers and blinking lights. The heartbeat of a company that had no soul. She moved quickly, pulled the scanner from her coat pocket, a matte black device no bigger than a phone, and slid it into the fiber switch port Harvey had identified. One click. Done. Talk to me, she whispered. Harvey's voice crackled in her earpiece. I see it. Connection stable. Stand by while I extract. A long silence followed. Then Harvey hissed, Damn. What? I'm in their internal project folder. Natalie, this is bad. She stayed still. Heart pounding. There's a file here. Blackbird Protocol. It's a series of ops targeting disruptors in key industries, tech, aviation, crypto, energy. Names, profiles, personal histories, vulnerabilities. He paused. You're the top name on the list. Natalie's blood ran cold. They've been watching you since before the Argo deal. And not just you. Your mother, your ex, your investors. There's even a file on Erica. You get it all? She whispered. Almost there. 2 more minutes. Suddenly, the door handle behind her jiggled. Natalie froze. Her hand flew to the scanner, ready to yank it if she had to. Then a voice outside the door. Hey, thought I heard something. Another voice answered, lower. Probably IT. They've been patching Reuters again. Yeah, well, not on my schedule. Footsteps. She whispered, Harvey, I need to move. Now. 10 more seconds. Don't unplug yet. She watched the door handle tilt. Not enough to open, but enough to say, they're thinking about it. The second voice again. Let it go. Not our floor. The steps faded. Natalie exhaled. Slow, deliberate. Harvey's voice returned. Got it. Pull it. Go. She yanked the scanner, slipped it back into her coat, and exited the server room as calmly as she could manage. Her fingers were trembling, but her walk didn't give it away. She passed the same guard. He barely looked up. Within minutes, she was back in the elevator, back in the lobby, back on the street. She ducked into an alley behind the building and dropped the badge into a sewer grate, peeled off the coat, and walked 3 blocks before exhaling again. Her burner phone buzzed. Harvey sent a screenshot. It was real. Blackbird_protocol_internal_final.pptx, along with a subfolder. Priority targets, N_web, movement reports, video assets. Natalie swallowed hard. It wasn't just surveillance. It was a playbook, and she was chapter 1. An hour later, back in the hotel, Natalie sat at the desk in her room while the team huddled around Harvey's laptop, projected on the TV screen. Monica covered her mouth as she scrolled through the slides. Carl stood rigid, arms crossed, jaw clenched. Jesus, he whispered. The presentation wasn't subtle. It laid out Ridgegate's strategy in plain language: destabilize competitors with private influence campaigns, weaponize media leaks, manipulate compliance agencies through shell firms, and when necessary, use tactical extraction. That last part, it included exactly what had happened to Natalie. The recommended action slide for her name included: initiate incident-driven discredit campaign, IDDC. Disrupt travel or operations patterns. Leak financial irregularity accusations. Trigger investor confidence loss. They weren't trying to just take the Argo deal, Carl said. They were trying to destroy you completely. Monica whispered. They almost did. But Natalie was still there, still breathing, still in the fight. She looked at the last slide, a timeline. The final action listed for Q3 was labeled simply: media reclamation, web exit required. Erica's voice came through the speaker. She'd been patched in remotely. This is it, she said. This is the smoking gun. If I run this story, they can't spin it. We go public. Natalie, we blow the doors off. Not yet, Natalie said. Everyone turned. I'm not just trying to expose them. I'm going to take the Argo deal back. And I'm going to finish it my way. Carl frowned. But if they know you have this, they'll panic, she said. And they'll make mistakes. She stood. I'm going to offer them a deal. Harvey blinked. You're what? I'll give them a choice. Walk away quietly, or I bury them publicly. They want power. They'll choose self-preservation. Carl shook his head. Or they'll double down. Natalie's eyes flashed. Let them. 2 nights later, she met with Ridgegate's managing director in a private room of a steakhouse in Midtown Manhattan. He was older, sharp-eyed, and wore arrogance like cologne. Natalie, he said smoothly, you've caused quite a stay. She sat across from him, file in hand. You tried to ruin my name, she said flatly. He smiled. I assure you, it was never personal. She dropped a USB drive on the table. He looked at it, then back at her. Everything's on there. Your entire Blackbird operation. His smile faded. If you move on Argo again, I go public. If you touch anyone on my team, I go public. And if I see another article, photo, or fake scandal, you better believe the second DOJ will be looking into you by morning. He didn't speak, didn't blink. You have 24 hours to back off. And not just me. All of it. All of us. She stood to leave. I built something that wasn't supposed to exist. And you came for it like you always do. She leaned down. Now watch what happens when you fail. She walked out. The next morning, Ridgegate's press office issued a brief statement. We are withdrawing our interest in the Argo partnership and redirecting our strategic focus. Natalie didn't smile. Not yet, because she knew something was still coming. And she was right. That afternoon, Erica called. Her voice was tight. Nat, there's something else. What? They tried to bury it deep. But I found a sealed memo. An internal one. Natalie waited. Erica said, Lang wasn't working alone. He had help. From who? A pause. And then, quiet as thunder, Argo's chief legal officer. Natalie's blood turned to ice. That was the man who had insisted she sign the partnership finalization papers in person. In Dallas. The same flight she had been pulled off. Natalie closed her eyes. The plan hadn't been to remove her. It had been to isolate her. Because someone knew she was about to uncover something much worse. And they weren't done with her yet. Natalie barely heard the end of Erica's sentence. Her ears were ringing. The air felt thin. Argo's chief legal officer. That wasn't just a betrayal. That was the final puzzle piece falling into place. And what it revealed chilled her to the bone. His name? Natalie asked. Erica didn't hesitate. Travis Dean. Natalie swallowed. She remembered him. Crisp suits, firm handshake, a polished, too-practiced smile. He'd sat across from her during negotiations, always deferential, always just here to make sure the legal language is clean. He was the one who'd reviewed her equity clauses, the one who'd insisted she personally fly to Dallas for final signatures due to state contract formalities. The same day she was pulled off the plane, She stood from her chair, her hotel room a blur around her. He knew. He orchestrated it, Erica said. I'm still digging, but I found a series of encrypted emails between Ridgegate and someone at Argo using a dummy shell address. Dates match up with when your office footage was stolen and when that fake article went live. Lang couldn't have done it alone. Natalie pressed her palm to the window. Her reflection stared back, eyes wide, jaw clenched. He was trying to trap me. Or wise, Erica said. I can't prove this part, but if you'd landed in Dallas, there's a chance something bigger was waiting. A planted scandal, a staged arrest, something they could spin into an incident, something to stain you permanently. Natalie didn't respond. She couldn't. It was one thing to be betrayed. It was another to realize that betrayal nearly became a takedown, one they would have justified, explained away, and buried her under until no one remembered her name except in whispers of what happened to her. Don't go back alone, Erica said quietly. Please. Natalie's mind was already moving faster than her pulse. I won't. I'm not flying to Dallas. Then what are you going to do? Natalie turned away from the window. I'm going to make them come to me. That evening, she booked a ballroom. Not just any ballroom, a private, closed-door space at the Fairmont in San Francisco, her home turf. Within 12 hours, she'd sent out a flurry of VIP invites under embargo, institutional investors, press with spine, community partners, regulators she'd built trust with over the years. All of them summoned for a private leadership update on the Argo partnership. She didn't say what it was. She wanted them all in the room. She wanted him in the room. And she wanted the truth to hit harder than any scandal could. Carl burst into the room around noon the next day, eyes wide, phone in hand. He RSVP'd. Natalie looked up from her notes. Dean. Carl nodded. Confirmed 5 minutes ago. Is flying in tonight. Says is bringing an internal counsel liaison. Probably trying to control the narrative. Natalie exhaled. Perfect. Monica leaned on the table. You sure you want to do this in front of everyone? If it backfires. Natalie looked at her. If I let him do this in the dark, then I'm no better than he is. The only way to end this is to end it in the light. Monica didn't argue. The plan was simple. Natalie would open the meeting as if it were a routine update. Calm. Measured. Then, halfway through, she'd cue Harvey, who would drop the slides they pulled from Blackbird, the real pitch deck, the internal strategy, and the emails proving Dean was part of it. The moment the data was shown, Natalie would confront him. Live. In front of everyone. And then she'd announce the future of Argo. Not with Dean's fingerprints on it, but with hers. No middlemen. No deals done in boardrooms behind her back. If the investors wanted truth, she was going to serve it on a silver plate. The room filled quickly the next day. Natalie stood backstage, dressed in black. Her mother's bracelet on her wrist. She peeked through the curtain. Every seat was filled. The press row was packed. Argo's senior VP had shown up too. And there, 3 rows from the front, sat Travis Dean, smiling, like he still thought he had a card to play. Natalie stepped on stage. Thank you all for coming. She didn't speak with fire. Not yet. She let the calm sink in, lull them. For 2 years, we've worked toward building a partnership with Argo that could shift what equity looks like in air travel, access, representation, infrastructure. But in the last several weeks, we've encountered obstacles. Some visible, some not. She paused. This morning, my team concluded a private investigation into a pattern of actions designed to destabilize this deal and discredit me personally. Now the room shifted. Heads turned. The press leaned forward. Normally, I'd settle this behind closed doors. But those doors, they're how these things stay buried. She turned slightly. Harvey. The screen behind her lit up. The first slide read, Blackbird Protocol, Ridgegate plus Argo correspondence. Dean's expression changed. Just slightly. A flicker in his jaw. Natalie kept going. You're looking at internal strategy documents from Ridgegate Capital. Documents that describe a coordinated campaign to smear my name, dismantle this partnership, and gain control of Argo without public scrutiny. Another click. Emails. Dated. Time-stamped. Forwarded. One of them signed by Travis Dean's alias, linked directly to his Argo credentials. You'll also see personal surveillance photos taken without consent, not just of me, but of my mother, my staff, and members of the press. Gasps now. Murmurs. Natalie didn't flinch. Mr. Dean, she said, turning toward him for the first time. Would you like to address the room? He stood, slow, smoothed his tie. His mouth opened, but Natalie spoke over him. Actually, before you answer, this final slide shows your approval of a forced deboarding scenario. My forced deboarding, scheduled precisely to prevent me from finalizing the Argo deal in Dallas. Dean froze. Silence flooded the room. Natalie's voice lowered. You tried to make sure I never stepped off that plane with my name intact. You failed. Someone in the crowd stood. An investor. Is this real? Yes, Natalie said. And it's only the beginning. She looked at the room now. Not at Dean. I will not walk away. I will not shrink so that corruption can grow. If Argo wants to move forward, it won't be with him. It'll be with new terms. Transparent ones. And if they don't? She stepped forward. We're building our own airline. The crowd erupted. It wasn't clapping. It was thunder. People stood. Reporters scrambled. Dean sat down, pale, defeated. That night, the story hit every major outlet. Natalie Webb exposes plot to derail $4 billion deal, unveils plan to launch inclusive airline. The next morning, Argo's board announced Dean's resignation effective immediately. Natalie didn't gloat. There was no time, because as she rode to the airport that evening to meet with regulators about launching the new venture, her driver handed her a phone. Someone left this at the front desk. Said it was for you only. Natalie took it. No name. No number. One message. A photo. A man in shadows, face hidden, standing in front of her building's security camera. Caption. You think it's over. Then a second photo. Her mother. At home. Lights off. Unaware. Caption. It's not. Natalie looked up. Eyes locked on the road. She whispered to herself. Then neither am I. Natalie didn't make it to the airport. She rerouted the car immediately. Eyes locked on the second photo. Her mother. Sitting on the couch, reading a magazine under a dim lamp. Harmless at first glance, until you noticed the vantage point. The angle wasn't from the street. It wasn't from the apartment hallway. It was taken from inside the home. The car tires squealed as the driver turned hard onto Piedmont Avenue, then veered left toward the private security office that now monitored all her family's residences. Natalie's fingers flew across her phone. She called Monica first. Get 2 armed guards to my mother's house. Now. No sirens. No calls. Just get them there. Then Harvey. I need every inch of the security feed from Mom's apartment for the past 24 hours. And run a scan on that phone. Trace it. I don't care if it's from a potato. I want to know who touched it and when. Her pulse was even, but her jaw clenched so tightly it ached. This wasn't just a power play anymore. They weren't just trying to sabotage her career, or take her deals, or ruin her public image. This was personal. This was psychological warfare. She arrived at her mother's apartment within 20 minutes. The building concierge looked up, startled, but she blew past him without a word, keyed into the elevator with her override code, and rode it in silence to the 12th floor. When she reached the door, 2 guards were already posted outside, exactly as Monica had ordered. She nodded to them, keyed in, and opened the door slowly. Mom, she called. Baby, her mother's voice floated from the living room. Natalie stepped inside. There was no sign of intrusion. Nothing was broken. No windows cracked. But her skin itched with unease. She walked down the hallway, checking the locks, the vents, even the smoke detector, anywhere a camera could have been hidden. Her mother looked up from the couch and immediately frowned. You okay? You look pale. Natalie crouched beside her. Did anyone come in here today? Anyone you didn't know? Her mother blinked. No, just the nurse this morning. Same woman. Gloria. Gloria left early today, Natalie said. 3 hours early. Her mother's frown deepened. No, she didn't. She left around 4 p.m. Natalie's stomach sank. She reached into her bag and pulled up the surveillance feed Harvey had sent her. Gloria had left at 1:14 p.m. So who was he at for? That night, the security footage revealed it all. At 3:59 p.m., a woman in medical scrubs entered the building using a hospital vendor badge. She had the same height and build as Gloria, wore her hair the same way, and kept her face turned just enough to dodge the facial recognition markers. But she wasn't Gloria. She walked straight to the apartment, knocked once, and let herself in. She stayed for 12 minutes. Then she left. Natalie stood in the Web Capital conference room, with her team huddled around the screen. She never touched your mother, Harvey said. No interaction. She just walked around the place. Slowly, like she was scouting it. For what? Carl asked. A threat? A kidnapping? Natalie didn't speak. She was watching the woman's hands in the video. She wasn't just walking. She was placing things. Small, quick movements. Beneath a lamp, behind a photo frame, under the bookshelf. Harvey's face went pale. She planted devices. Carl cursed under his breath. We need to sweep the place now. Natalie nodded, but her voice was low, distant. Wait, don't remove them yet. Everyone turned to her. If we take them out now, we tip our hand. We'll let them keep watching, but we control what they see. The next day, Natalie ran a press conference from her home office, deliberately within the field of the fake surveillance devices. She made it seem routine. She took Zoom calls. She chatted with her assistant. She held a coffee mug, but didn't drink it. Every move was a performance. She wanted whoever was watching to believe she'd gone back to normal, that they'd rattled her just enough to back her down, but not enough to make her dangerous. Meanwhile, Monica worked on a parallel operation with private security, sweeping her mother's apartment room by room using infrared, isolating each device, and rerouting their data to a dead server loop. A fake feed. Let the watchers watch. Natalie, meanwhile, went hunting. She and Erica pawed through hospital staffing records, pulling badge logs for the time of the imposter's entry. They narrowed it down to one match, a badge assigned to a temp nurse at the adjacent cancer center, one that had gone missing the week before. No report filed. No replacement request made. It was an inside job, and whoever pulled it off had been given access by someone who knew where Natalie's mother would be. Not Ridgegate. Not Dean. Someone else. Another name Natalie hadn't considered yet. Until Harvey pinged her with a file that had just dropped in a hidden folder he'd been monitoring, one still live inside the Ridgegate network, buried under the Blackbird archive. It was an encrypted chat thread. Dozens of messages. The sender ID? Argo extension 013. A number, not a name. Natalie's voice was low. Can you break it? Harvey nodded. Give me 2 hours. 2 hours later, he had it. The chats were between two parties, the numbered Argo user and an anonymous external alias linked to a proxy address in London. The tone was strategic, ruthless. The messages discussed emotional leverage, target fatigue, and optics control. But what stopped Natalie cold was one line, dated the night before she was pulled from the plane. If web is delayed, launch sequence B agent will confirm the target environment. And another, a day later. Photo verified. Subject's mother in safe zone. Proceed with phase 2. She read the line 3 times. Safe zone was code. It meant, we've located your weakness. They weren't just trying to ruin her. They were trying to trap her in her own humanity. Natalie leaned back. Harvey, she said quietly, can we trace Argo extension 013? He frowned. Not completely, but we got a MAC address. And a location tag. Where? He hesitated, then said, Chicago, Argo's West Hub. Carl let out a low breath. The second legal office. Natalie stayed at the screen. Her pulse wasn't racing. Her face wasn't angry. She looked calm. Ice calm. I'm going there, she said. Carl blinked. You're what? I'm not playing defense anymore. They crossed the line. Now I'm crossing back. Harvey said, you won't be safe. I don't care, Natalie said. This ends with the truth. Or it ends with me. She stood. Get the jet ready. That night, as the jet climbed into the dark sky over Atlanta, Natalie sat alone, reviewing the final files from the Blackbird cache. One message stood out, one that hadn't been flagged earlier. It was short. One line. If she survives Phase 2, escalate to Rook Protocol. Remove public trust. Remove internal support. Remove the subject. Natalie stayed at the word remove. Not silence. Not ruin. Not discourage. Remove. She knew what that meant. Chicago wasn't going to be a meeting. It was going to be a war zone. And if she didn't make it back, they'd win. She reached into her bag, pulled out a small black envelope, and slid it into her assistant's hands before boarding. If anything happens to me, she said, this goes to Erica. And you don't stop until it's printed. Her assistant's eyes welled. Natalie. But she just nodded. And then she stepped onto the plane. Into the storm. The plane touched down in Chicago at 3:43 a.m. Snow drifted in the blue-gray dark, fine and silent, swirling like ash across the tarmac. Natalie stepped off the jet into the bitter cold with a single bag slung over her shoulder and a mission sharp enough to slice steel. Waiting at the gate was a single figure, tall, lean, face mostly obscured by a thick scarf and a dark coat. He said, voice low but clear. I'm the contact from North Point Private. Harvey sent me. Natalie nodded once. She didn't ask for credentials. If Harvey vouched, she moved. No questions. The man opened the back door of a waiting black SUV, and she climbed in without a word. They drove through a sleeping city, past shut-down diners and glowing gas stations, until they reached the river and turned east. Argo's western legal hub loomed on the lakeside like a fortress. It wasn't flashy, concrete and steel, 20 floors, surrounded by a private lot with guards rotating every 15 minutes. The building didn't have the polish of a corporate headquarters. It had the architecture of a bunker. Natalie studied the security rhythm. Window. The driver checked his watch. You'll have 12 minutes after the second delivery truck clears. They'll assume you're a courier. Your badge will ping green for level 2, enough to get into the first 3 floors. And the target? He handed her a slim phone. A single profile was loaded on the screen. Alyssa Hartley, Director of Legal Intelligence, Argo Western. Natalie stayed at the name. That was the real identity behind Argo Extension 013. She's the one who triggered the surveillance escalation, the driver said. The one who greenlit Rook Protocol. Natalie's breath was fog in the cold. Does she know I'm coming? No. Good. She entered the building at 4:38 a.m. A parka, a delivery box, a badge clipped to her collar. No one stopped her. The security scanner blinked green as expected, and the guard barely looked up. 3rd floor, East Wing, Office 3 to 118. Natalie walked the corridor with slow, steady steps, counting doors, breathing through her nose. She found the office. Door locked. Lights off. She pulled out a slim tool Harvey had given her in D.C., a digital skeleton key for older badge systems. One tap to the panel, and the lock clicked. She slipped inside. It was dark. Cold. She didn't turn on the light. She moved straight to the computer, booted it up, and inserted a drive already preloaded with Harvey's mirror software. The system unlocked faster than she expected. Hartley had been online just 5 hours earlier. The screen flickered once, then twice, and then a folder appeared. Rook_prot_active//op_satellite_net. Natalie froze. Satellite? She clicked. Inside the folder, call logs, transaction records, metadata from Newswire services, a document titled Projected Damage Index, targetn.web. But the worst came from the emails. The most recent one had been sent just 6 hours earlier. Subject: confirm execution of Rook to initiate final protocol. Body: target remains active. No sign of destabilization. Next step: reputational implosion plus asset freeze. Partner press outlets and financial institutions have been briefed. Confirmed timeline. Natalie stayed at the message. Reputational implosion. Asset freeze. They were going to ruin her in one massive blow. A cascade of media leaks, bank pressure, and political whispers to make her untouchable, unemployable, discredited forever. And they were hours, maybe minutes, from pulling the trigger. She copied the file. Every last byte. She was about to exit when a motion sensor pinged in the hallway outside. She ducked low, eyes darting. Footsteps. 2 sets. She grabbed the flash drive, shut down the system, slid it into her coat pocket, and moved toward the emergency exit. But the hallway was narrow, and the steps were getting closer. She hit the stairwell just as the office door opened behind her. "Hey, wait!" A man's voice, sharp, surprised. She didn't run. Running got you followed. She moved fast but steady, descended 2 flights, then hit the second-floor restroom, locked herself in, pulled out her phone. "Harvey," she whispered. "I have it. They are on to me. Send the exfil. ETA 5 minutes. North side exit." Natalie sat on the closed toilet, breathing through her nose, her coat clutched tight around her. Outside the bathroom, voices echoed through the hall. Someone opened the hallway door. Footsteps passed, then retreated. She counted 30 full seconds, then walked out, calm, composed, and headed straight for the north side. She was 2 steps from the exit when her phone buzzed again. An unknown number. She hesitated, then tapped open the message. "You really should have stayed on the plane." Attached, a grainy, black and white still frame. Her assistant, holding the envelope Natalie had left behind. Phase 3, begin. Natalie's hand shook for the first time in weeks. She buzzed through the exit door, heart pounding. The SUV was waiting. Back door open. She dove in. "Go." They peeled off down the icy street, tires skidding. 10 minutes later, safe in a private safe house suite across the river, she finally caught her breath. Harvey's face appeared on her laptop, live from Atlanta. "Got the package." She held up the drive. "You're not going to believe what's on here," she said. He nodded. "You're not going to believe what happened here." Her blood chilled. "What?" "Your assistant's missing." Natalie sat up straight. "What do you mean missing?" She left with the envelope. Her phone's off. GPS dead. She never made it home. Natalie's voice dropped. "She's the only one who knows where the backup documents are. If they got her, then they know where every skeleton is buried." Harvey finished. Natalie's head spun. They had moved faster than she thought. And now the only person who could protect the fail-safe information, proof of every cover-up, every deal, every name involved in the Blackbird protocol, was gone. Erica called next. "You need to listen to me carefully," she said. "Lang's in Chicago." Natalie blinked. "What?" "He flew in last night. I pulled his plane logs. No press, no corporate trail. Full ghost manifest. This isn't just cleanup. This is final." Natalie leaned forward. "If he's here, I can end it. Or he can," Erica warned. "You need to think this through." Natalie stayed at the dock window. "I'm done thinking." She held up the flash drive. "I have a warhead." Then she slid it into her laptop, and everything changed. Because the last file on the drive wasn't about her. It was about someone else. A new name. Erica Dawson. Natalie's breath caught, her voice barely above a whisper. "They were never just coming for me." The moment Natalie saw Erica's name on the file, her stomach turned. It wasn't a surprise, not really. But seeing it spelled out in cold typeface inside the Blackbird Protocol's escalation folder felt like someone slamming a steel door shut in her chest. Subject, E. Dawson. Status, Level 2 threat. Media influence a public ally. Recommended action. Dossier disruption, discredit threat, and neutralize distribution channels. Execution date. T+3 days from subject end. Web implosion. They had a plan for her. A countdown. And if Natalie hadn't found this drive tonight, Erica would have been next. She hit the call button. Erica answered on the second ring, still in her apartment in D.C., framed in warm light, looking tired but alert. "You need to leave," Natalie said immediately. Erica blinked. "I'm sorry. What?" "They mocked you," Natalie said. "They built a plan to discredit you. Leak a false ethics report to your employer. Use a fake interview transcript to imply you falsified a story. They even have a draft of a sexual harassment complaint with your name on it. Fabricated. Signed by someone who doesn't exist." Erica didn't speak for a moment. Then, "How long do I have?" Natalie checked the metadata. They were set to move 3 days after they took me down. They didn't think I'd get this far. You're already on their radar. Maybe hours. Erica's voice stayed steady. Then I need to publish now. Not yet, Natalie said. We have enough to burn them. Yes, but they still have my assistant. They know the failsafe file exists. If we spook them too hard, they'll go to ground. Or worse. What's worse than this? Natalie didn't answer, because she didn't want to say it out loud. What's worse than sabotage? Elimination. They moved fast. Erica caught a red-eye to Chicago. Natalie had a safe location prepped near the lake, one of the old investor hideouts used during early fundraising days. Unlisted. No Wi-Fi. Paper maps only. Harvey coordinated the signal tracking from Atlanta, and by noon the next day, they had a partial lead. The burner phone Natalie had given her assistant had pinged once, briefly, from a train yard on the city's south side. It had disconnected immediately, but the signal was enough. Natalie knew the area. Old freight terminals, mostly abandoned now, except for a few buildings converted into private security training zones. Ridgegate's contractors used them often. She geared up with one of Harvey's people. Body armor, comms, a pocket-sized jammer to block outbound surveillance signals. No weapons, not unless absolutely necessary. She wasn't going in to fight. She was going in to find her. They pulled up at 3:07 p.m., parked behind a rusting fence that once guarded train cargo and now guarded shadows. Natalie stepped out and felt the wind slice across her face. The sun was out, but it didn't warm anything. The warehouse in question was long, metal-skinned, covered in graffiti. There was no sign of movement, just silence, and the slow creak of loose aluminum siding in the wind. She and the operative moved fast, low, tight to the wall. At the back of the warehouse was a door. Unlocked. That was never good. They stepped in, flashlights cutting through dust and decay. First corridor. Empty. Second corridor. Paper scraps. A flipped-over desk. Still no signs of life. Then she saw it. A coat. Familiar. Folded, almost neatly, on a crate. Natalie's chest seized. A few steps more, and a soft sound, muffled. Behind a partition wall. Natalie rounded the corner. And there she was. Her assistant. Tied, but alive. Gagged but aware. Eyes wide and relieved the moment she saw her. Natalie rushed over, hands shaking as she cut the zip ties and pulled the tape gently from her mouth. I thought they were going to kill me, her assistant whispered. I didn't tell them anything. Not where the backup drive is. Not what was in the envelope. Nothing. Natalie swallowed the lump in her throat. You did good. I'm getting you out. They didn't speak again until they were back in the SUV, speeding north. Once her assistant was safe, Natalie passed her a bottle of water and the drive she'd carried since D.C. You still want to do this? She asked quietly. Her assistant nodded, stronger than before. We've come too far not to. Natalie turned to Harvey over comms. Upload everything, but not to one outlet. I know, Harvey said. 27 independent sources. Decentralized drops. Mirror archives. Dark web redundancy. Whistleblower status protocols. All greenlit. Natalie exhaled. They were finally ready. By midnight, the Blackbird protocol had been leaked. The whole thing. Every file, every email, every memo. The airport coordination documents. The surveillance orders. The planned media takedowns. The financial influence logs. Everything. Erica published a centerpiece article on a new secure site under her byline. The Blackbird Files. How corporate saboteurs tried to erase a CEO, a company, and the future. The story went viral within the hour. Natalie's inbox filled with support from regulators, investors, journalists, and CEOs who'd feared they were alone. And within 12 hours of publication, two things happened. First, the DOJ announced a formal investigation into Ridgegate Capital and Argo Airlines for conspiracy, surveillance abuse, and securities fraud. Second, Travis Dean was arrested at a private airfield outside Phoenix, trying to board a jet under an assumed identity. But Lang vanished. No security footage. No flight logs. No cell activity. He'd gone underground. Natalie stayed at the news alert, eyes burning. He's not done, she said aloud. Monica looked up. You think he'll come back? Natalie didn't answer at first. Then, he's not going to fight out in the open anymore. Now it'll come sideways. Quiet. He'll try to rebuild. Monica stepped closer. So what do we do? Natalie turned to the wall behind her, where a new map had been pinned, lines stretching across industries, firms, think tanks, lobbyist groups, all tied to Blackbird satellites. We don't just wait, she said. We build louder, stronger, publicly, and we make it impossible for someone like him to ever hide again. That night, Natalie stood on the roof of Web Capital's new tech campus, funded by reclaimed capital from terminated Ridgegate partnerships, donated by investors who now backed her vision without compromise. The wind whipped her curls around her face. She looked out over the city and whispered, not to anyone, but for herself. You came for everything. She clenched her fist. And I still have more. Her phone buzzed once. A message from an encrypted thread she hadn't used in weeks. New target sighted. Location, Dubai. Alias, Morgan Graff. Likely Lang. Natalie's lips parted. So he was alive, running, and still watching. She tapped the phone and typed one word. Good. Natalie didn't sleep. Not even after the DOJ charges dropped. Not after Dean was perp-walked in front of 100 reporters. Not after her mother was finally moved into a secure, private K facility with 24-hour protection. Not even after the New York Times, The Atlantic, and 60 Minutes begged her for interviews. She wasn't ready to let her guard down. Not when Lang was still breathing. Dubai. Morgan Graff. That was the alias. Harvey had confirmed it the next morning. Passport logs, shell companies, encrypted banking activity. The trail was thin but real. Lang had moved fast after the leak. Liquidated accounts. Disappeared from Ridgegate's board. His name had been scrubbed from internal directories before Dean was even in handcuffs. But Lang didn't know one thing. Natalie had already set a trap. She hadn't leaked all of Blackbird. She'd held something back. The Rook expansion protocol, the next-gen operations plan Ridgegate had been developing for 2 years. A cross-industry blueprint for how to destabilize rising competitors, manufacture disinformation at scale, and exert pressure on elected officials. It wasn't just about Natalie. It was about controlling the future of every industry led by people like her. Women, black leaders, immigrants, activists, journalists. That protocol wasn't just illegal. It was treasonous, and she was going to use it. 2 days later, she sat down with the Secretary of Commerce in a secure conference room in D.C., alongside a federal cybersecurity task force, 3 senators, and a small team of economic justice advocates. On the screen, Harvey walked them through what Natalie now called the map. Lines of influence, off-the-books donors, corporate PACs connected to shadow firms, lobbying groups that had quietly received millions from Ridgegate-owned shells. It was bigger than anyone imagined. I didn't just uncover a smear campaign, Natalie said. I uncovered a template. She paused. This isn't about me anymore. It's about how close we came to losing control of our public trust. She handed over the final flash drive, the one she hadn't leaked. And by the time she left that building, the U.S. Attorney's Office had launched the Web Initiative, a joint federal-private partnership to investigate large-scale economic sabotage and systemic bias in corporate finance. The world was shifting, and Natalie Webb had pushed it. But still, Lang. That night, she stood alone on her balcony, staring at the skyline of Atlanta. Her assistant was safe, her mother stable, her company not only intact but growing. And yet the quiet didn't comfort her. Lang had vanished once before, and now that his systems were exposed, he wouldn't run forever. He'd try to rebuild, and that meant he'd come back. The only question was how, and where. Harvey's voice buzzed in her ear. I got something, he said. Natalie sat up straight. A small Dubai-based firm just filed for an aviation logistics license. 3 board members, all fake names. Registered capital matches a Ridgegate offshore account we flagged 2 months ago. He sent the name. Orion Gateway Systems. Natalie stayed at it. Lang always had a flair for drama. Do we know where he's operating from? She asked. High-end villa. Guarded. But here's the weird part. They are not trying to hide anymore. They are building a launch platform. She frowned. A platform for what? Harvey hesitated. It looks like a digital bank for non-transparent investment in aviation fuel and private security contracting. Basically, the same playbook, but updated for this new market. Natalie nodded once. Lang wasn't hiding. He was rebuilding. She stood, grabbed her bag, and headed for the door. Where are you going? Harvey asked. To end this. By the end of the week, she was in Dubai. Officially, she was there to speak at a global innovation summit. A safe cover. Her team arranged panels and press ops, all while Natalie moved behind the scenes. Quiet meetings with regulators, off-the-record chats with trade ministers, and a private dinner with a Crown family legal advisor. Within 2 days, she had what she needed: Lang's property holdings, the Shell company registration documents, and a quiet green light to pursue her case if she had irrefutable proof. She already did. What she didn't have yet was him. But that changed on a Thursday night, in a rooftop lounge overlooking the Persian Gulf. He arrived just after 11 p.m., dressed in linen and flanked by 2 stone-faced security men. He looked older, slimmer, but the same glint was there, the one that had underestimated her from the beginning. She waited until he sat down. Then she walked over. He saw her before she reached the table. He didn't look surprised. "Ms. Webb," he said coolly. "Or should I say Madam Executioner?" She didn't smile. "I came to finish what you started." He gestured to the seat across from him. "I assume you're not here for pleasantries." She sat today. "I'm here to give you a choice," she said. Lang raised an eyebrow. "Another ultimatum?" "No, a deal." She slid a folder across the table. Inside, a contract, a full confession agreement, backdated cooperation with federal authorities, and a mandatory freeze of all Orion Gateway operations for 10 years. Lang chuckled. "You think I'll sign this?" Natalie leaned in. "I know you will." "Why?" She tapped the folder again. "Because if you don't, that confession gets published. And not just to the U.S. press. To Interpol. To the UN Financial Council. To every regulatory body you bribed, dodged, and lied to." She let the next words hang in the air. "I still have leverage, but I'm giving you one last chance to walk away." Lang's face hardened. "And what do you get?" Natalie stood. "I get to build without someone like you poisoning the soil." She walked away without looking back. By the time she landed in Atlanta again, the signature had come through. Lang had signed, and his empire was dismantling in real time. The final blow came 3 days later, when Natalie announced the official launch of Sky Collective, the world's first Black-owned, sustainability-focused airline venture. Built not with Argo, but on the ashes of the system that tried to erase her. At the press conference, she stood at the podium, thousands watching live, her voice steady. "They tried to pull me off a plane," she said, "but I learned to fly." The stage lights were hot. The air in the press room crackled with anticipation. Reporters crowded shoulder to shoulder, whispering into phones, scanning documents, adjusting cameras. The Sky Collective launch was already being called the most consequential startup announcement in aviation since deregulation. But it wasn't just about planes. It was about survival. It was about Natalie Webb refusing to vanish. She stepped up to the podium. Her navy blue blazer was sharp, collar open, posture firm. Her mother's bracelet rested on her wrist, flashing once beneath the lights. "I want to start by saying something I never got to say the day I was pulled off that flight," she began, her voice even but edged with steel. "I wasn't late. I wasn't a security risk. I didn't do anything wrong." Silence blanketed the room. "I was removed because someone thought I didn't belong. Not in first class. Not in aviation. Not in power." She let that sit. "But I didn't walk away. I walked forward. Clicking pens. Flashbulbs. Sky Collective is not a revenge project. It's a rescue. For the industry. For the climate. For the people who've never had a seat at 30,000 feet unless they were pouring coffee or stowing luggage." The screens behind her lit up with the company's rollout plan. Carbon-negative aircraft partnerships, Wake Force training programs for underserved communities, partnerships with global equity investors. This isn't just a new airline. This is a declaration. If the door gets slammed, we build another. A standing ovation broke the silence. It wasn't polite. It was thunder. And it wasn't for what she'd said. It was for what she'd survived. Behind closed doors later that night, Natalie stood with Erica, Carl, Monica, and Harvey. No cameras. No audience. Just the people who had refused to leave her side. Erica raised a glass of champagne. To Sky. Everyone cheered. Except Natalie. She was already thinking ahead. Lang's still out there, she said quietly, once the room settled. Carl frowned. He signed. We've got the freeze in place. Orion Gateway is dust. Natalie shook her head. People like him don't need companies. They need silence. That's their fuel. He'll try again. Harvey leaned forward. We're still monitoring his known aliases. If he surfaces, we'll know. Natalie nodded, but her eyes stayed hard, because somewhere deep down, she didn't believe Lang would try again. She believed he already had. Her instinct proved right. 2 weeks later, Harvey burst into her office holding a tablet. We found a ghost firm, he said, breathless. Not in Lang's name, but in his style. Same account structure. Same digital handprint. He handed her the tablet. Etherpath Holdings. Registered in Nigeria. Linked to over $40 million in defense logistics contracts. Natalie's eyes narrowed. Who's the listed CEO? Harvey hesitated. You're not going to like it. She scrolled. Her breath caught. Randall Trask, a former Argo board member. The same one who'd introduced Natalie to Dean. The same man who'd smirked during early meetings, then disappeared quietly once the scandal broke. Lang wasn't rebuilding alone. He was recruiting, and Natalie knew what that meant. Blackbird wasn't dead. It had gone decentralized. A week later, she was in Lagos. No press, no public schedule, just a brief message sent to an old contact from the early days of Web Capital, a Nigerian VC named Ifeoma Bako, one of the few people Natalie trusted outside her inner circle. They met on the rooftop of a slow-burning jazz club in the city's financial district. The wind carried the sound of traffic and saxophone riffs. They're moving fast, Ifeoma said, pushing a folder across the table. Not just defense. Mining. Shipping. Data brokerage. The new play isn't aviation, it's infrastructure. Natalie scanned the documents. 10 shell companies. Hundreds of employees. A web of procurement contracts tied to countries with weak oversight. They want to privatize the next decade before anyone knows they've entered the room, Ifeoma said. And they are using Lang's methods. Natalie looked up. He didn't need Blackbird to survive, she said. He just needed a blueprint. She stood. We have to break the model. Back in Atlanta, she called an emergency meeting. This isn't about revenge anymore, she told the team. This is a systems war. And if we only react, we lose. What's the move? Carl asked. Natalie tapped her screen. A schematic lit up. We replicate what they tried to do to us, but in reverse. Confusion. She explained. Lang built a system to destabilize truth, confidence, and presence. We build a system to fortify it. A counter protocol. Erica blinked. You're talking about infrastructure that protects people instead of profits. Yes, Natalie said, but with teeth. She outlined the plan. Project Beacon, a global digital alert system that tracks private sector manipulation attempts in real time. A public whistleblower archive powered by blockchain, immune to deletion. A rolling protection fund for journalists, founders, and civic innovators under threat. An AI-powered map that tracks economic suppression attempts across borders. Harvey was already grinning. Lang built a black box, he said. You're building a spotlight. Natalie smiled for the first time in weeks. No one gets dragged off the plane again, she said. But Lang wasn't finished. Because while Natalie was building light, he was learning how to work in shadow. And the final message came at 2:31 a.m. A small, hand-delivered envelope slid under her door. No return address. Inside, a flash drive. She plugged it in. A single video played. Lang, in shadow, backlit. His voice was calm. Ms. Webb, he said. You won this round. Congratulations. But you've made enemies in more rooms than you've been invited to. A pause. You build Sky. I'll build Storm. The screen went black. And Natalie understood. This wasn't a finale. It was the last breath before the real fight. Natalie stayed at the blank screen. Lang's voice still echoed in her head. Measured, smug, poisonous. You build sky. I'll build storm. He wasn't bluffing. She sat alone in the conference room, city lights glittering behind her. The flash drive still spun slowly on the table. A single object. No metadata. No traceable IP. Just the video. She'd built a company. A defense system. A movement. But Lang had built something too. A hydra. Cut one head, two more grew. Beacon was live. Sky was funded. Public trust was on her side. And yet, the war wasn't over. It had just moved off the map. The next morning, Erica broke the news over encrypted video. We've confirmed 5 takedown requests on our Beacon node in the last 6 hours. All from fake compliance agencies. All routed through EU servers. Natalie's expression didn't change. Lang. Not directly, but one of the signature fragments matches the ransomware code Ridgegate used last year. Harvey's voice joined in from another window. We're bracing for a digital wave. Could be today, could be tomorrow, but it's coming. Bring down Beacon, Natalie said. Carl blinked. Wait, what? Not permanently, just for a day. Let them think it's down for good. We'll bait them into showing their hand. She leaned forward, voice quiet but clear. Then we go on the offensive. By midday, Beacon's primary interface went offline. Natalie made sure the press got wind of it. Technical issues, her team said. Temporary outage. Behind the scenes, Harvey had cloned the core system and rerouted its mirror to a private subnet known only to 4 people. If Lang or any of his partners moved, they'd see it. And they did. 4 hours into the takedown, the honeypot lit up. An attempt to flood the archive with falsified whistleblower entries, stories that weren't real, all targeting the same companies Lang had recently bought into. Natalie watched the false entries build. 1, 2, 12, then 9 to 7, 106 to 4, and buried inside them, a mistake. One file carried raw metadata from a user who hadn't fully anonymized their location. Dubai. Again, same network tag as Etherpath Holdings. Lang had taken the bait, but it was what came next that made Natalie stand up from her chair. Harvey pulled the false files apart and found a document, encrypted but salvageable, an internal roadmap. Project Relay, Phase 1. It wasn't just cyber sabotage. Lang was launching a new initiative, designed to replicate Blackbird under the guise of open-source investment tools, AI-powered apps marketed toward minority founders and creators. Harmless on the surface. But beneath the branding, behavioral tracking, predictive suppression, risk scoring based on political speech, community engagement, even donation history. He was building a machine to sort the next generation before they ever took off. And once again, Natalie had found it too early. Too clearly. She looked at her team. We shut it down. Not in secret. Not like before. We burn it. Publicly. Carl hesitated. But how? We don't have hard ties yet. And Lang's buried under a dozen new names. We don't need ties, she said. We need a confession. That night, Natalie met with a man named Elijah Grant, a former Ridgegate systems engineer who'd gone dark after Blackbird's collapse. He agreed to meet in an empty church in Detroit. He hadn't spoken to anyone since leaving the firm, not even his sister. When Natalie entered, he was already sitting near the pulpit. Quiet. Tired. You know why I'm here, she said. He nodded. I read the protocol. I ran pieces of it. I didn't know what I was building until it was too late. Lang's launching something new, she said. Called Relay. Elijah's eyes darkened. He rebuilt the framework. Cleaned the code. Hired offshore teams to create tools that look like equity platforms but function like extraction engines. Extraction. He nodded. They pull data from founders, ideas, pitch materials, financials, and run silent evaluations. Risk-to-return ratios. If they see a threat, they tip off competitors or quietly apply pressure. Natalie felt sick. Is training the next Blackbird on people who trust him. Elijah looked down at his hands. I want to stop it, but I can't go public. They'll find me. Natalie reached into her coat and handed him a secure token drive. Plug this into any network you have access to. It'll link us to every node he's built. Then walk away. We'll do the rest." Elijah didn't move. "You're sure you want this fight?" he asked. She stared at him. "I didn't want it the first time," she said. "But it came for me anyway." 2 days later, Natalie stood on stage again. This time, not in a hotel ballroom. This time, it was the UN Global Tech Ethics Summit in Geneva. She wasn't on the schedule, but she walked on stage anyway. Live-streamed. No security to stop her. She pulled up a single slide, the false front of inclusion, a new weapon against equity. Then she spoke. "In the past 2 years, I have been surveilled, humiliated, sabotaged, and targeted by systems designed to break people like me before we ever get to the gate. I survived." The room was silent. "But this is bigger than me now." She clicked to the next slide. Real screenshots, real logs, real metadata. Then she showed Relay. And then she named Lang. First and last. His real name. His aliases. The countries he'd hidden in. The money he'd laundered through fake VC funds. The apps he'd launched under different brands. And the faces of the young founders he'd already tried to erase. Erica posted the full archive online the moment Natalie left the stage. Within hours, governments around the world began freezing Lang's accounts. Interpol issued a red notice. Lang's empire started to fall apart, this time before it could metastasize. And yet Natalie didn't celebrate. Because just before midnight, as she boarded a flight home, her phone buzzed. Unknown number. A single message. "There's no flight you can take I haven't already charted." Attached, a photo of her team, standing in their new office, taken from across the street. Zoomed in. Too close. Natalie stayed at it, then turned to the window of the plane. Lang was gone, but his blueprint had been studied, copied, and others were following it now. The photo haunted her, not because of what it showed. Carl gesturing at a whiteboard, Monica laughing over a coffee cup, Javi leaning against the wall, deep in thought. It was a normal moment. Routine. But that's what made it terrifying. Someone was watching her people. Not targeting her this time. Targeting them. Natalie sat motionless on the jet, staring at the image on her phone. The plane hummed beneath her, cutting through the dark sky over the Atlantic. Geneva had been a victory, but not the final one. She looked out the window, her reflection staring back. They weren't just trying to stop her anymore. They were trying to undo the very idea of her. The moment the jet touched down in Atlanta, Natalie was moving. She didn't even go home. Her driver rerouted straight to the Web Capital Security Center. Monica, Carl, and Javi were already waiting. Natalie walked in, tossed the phone on the table, and pointed at the screen. "Tell me exactly how that photo got taken." Javi was already scanning metadata, taken with a long lens. From the parking deck across the street. Time-stamped 3:18 p.m. yesterday. "Security footage?" she asked. Carl pulled up the building cams. They watched it happen, frame by frame. A silver SUV pulled into the garage at 3:03 p.m. sat with the engine running. A man got out. Ball cap, sunglasses, dark coat. He aimed the lens. Took the shot. Got back in the car. License plate, fake. Face, hidden. He left at 3:22. "Not Lang," Javi said. "Build's wrong. Movement's off. But trained." "A copycat," Natalie said quietly. "Someone who's read the Blackbird playbook." Carl muttered, "You were right." Lang didn't need to stay. He just needed to pass the torch. Natalie stayed at the screen. Then we find out who caught it. Over the next 48 hours, they worked non-stop. And then Monica found it. An anonymous user had uploaded a full diagram of Sky Collective's business model, down to the hiring practices and payroll structure, to a private forum on a dark web investment group called Thresher. The group called Sky a strategic obstacle to market normalization. It didn't read like finance. It read like war. Natalie stood over Monica's shoulder, reading every word. "They are trying to paint us as a threat to free enterprise," she said. Carl scoffed. "Because we exist. Because we're proof," she corrected. "Proof that you don't need their system. And that terrifies them." The posts weren't signed. But Javi traced one of the IP fragments to an address in upstate New York. A think tank. Privately funded. Obscure. She'd never heard of it. Redbridge Institute. Sounds harmless, Monica said. It's not, Natalie replied. Lang isn't hiding anymore. He's franchising. The next week was a blay. Natalie and Erica pieced together Redbridge's funding trail. Half of it led to PACs, the other half to a cluster of anonymous donations that trace back to a London-based firm once connected to Ridgegate's early money. Same roots. New vines. Sky began facing quiet obstacles. One of their airport agreements vanished overnight. A new licensing delay appeared in Colorado. An anonymous op-ed accused Web Capital of inflating minority contracting numbers. Completely false, but picked up by a dozen right-leaning media outlets. And then came the worst of it. A call from their primary aviation tech partner. Natalie, the executive said, voice tight. We're getting heat. Our board's scared. If this keeps up, we may need to pause the rollout. She didn't argue. She simply said, if you pause, I go public. A long silence. We're not the ones they want, he said finally. It's you. She hung up. The team gathered that night in a conference room. Harvey outlined the digital SME patents. Carl listed the banks being quietly pressured to flag Sky for compliance reviews. Monica showed a fake internal document that had been slipped into their public investor portal, designed to make it look like Natalie had overstated capital reserves. All traceable to Redbridge. All poison. Natalie stood before them. I know what you're thinking, she said. That this will never stop. That for every Lang we bind down, another one will crawl out of the smoke. No one said anything, so she kept going. But that's not the point. She took a breath. The point is that we don't stop, because what we're building doesn't depend on any one company, or any one woman, or even one lifetime. She paused. It's a structure. It's resistance, written in capital, and code, and law. Her voice cracked, just slightly. I can't promise it gets easier, but I can promise they are afraid. Because this time, we didn't just survive. We documented everything, and the whole world is watching. Harvey lifted his phone. Beacons back online. Fully mirrored. Zero-day holes closed. Anonymous data drops coming in. Monica added, and Erica's going live in the morning with a second wave. She's naming Redbridge. With evidence. Natalie nodded. Then we don't wait anymore. She turned to Carl. Greenlight the counterplay. He didn't hesitate. One command. Dozens of coordinated drops. Legal complaints. Press packets. Shareholder memos. Simultaneous. And just like that, Redbridge didn't own the narrative anymore. Natalie did. The next day, she stood in front of a crowd at Howard University. She hadn't planned to speak, but she felt it rise in her. This isn't just a business, she told the students. It's a beacon, and you are not here to fit into broken systems. You're here to break them. Cheers erupted. Phones lifted. Her voice carried. Don't ask for space. Build it. Don't wait to be lifted. Launch. That night, after everyone had gone, Natalie stood alone in her office. She looked out at the Atlanta skyline. Her phone buzzed. No number. One final message. We lost the sky, but not the storm. She stayed at it. Then she typed. That's the thing about storms. They pass, but we fly above them now. And hit send. Epilogue. 6 months later, Sky Collective flew its first commercial flight. Atlanta to Oakland. All solo augmented. Staffed by the first all-women, BIPOC-led crew in U.S. aviation history. At 36,000 feet, Natalie sat in the cockpit jump seat, watching clouds peel away beneath the plane. The captain turned to her. She said, We've reached cruising altitude. Natalie looked ahead. Steady sky. Smooth A. And no one could pull her from this flight. Not ever again.